I think bullying is something that a lot of people experience, but we don't necessarily identify it as such. And I'll give an example. When you have kids that are, we all have been there, that are very young, like when we're, let's say in elementary school, let's say we're 14, 15, keeping someone out of the group and keeping someone isolated is a form of bullying, right? Making someone feel like they're not a part of the collective, right? Or trying to tear down someone's confidence is a form of bullying, but we view it as something else. We may say that, that's just what kids do, but not necessarily, because some of the things that, and you touched on it, Haley, some of the things that you mentioned, you see people do it in the corporate world, you see people doing it at work, you may see people do it in the grocery store, at the church, at the synagogue, at the temple, the mosque, wherever, because they haven't unlearned the behavior,
Yeah,
right? And to
absolutely.
hear the two of you say that you've reached a point where no one can make you feel that way anymore because you remember how it was to not have the self love. You remember how it was maybe not to have the confidence in yourself and saying that, what, maybe these people are right. Maybe I am this way. Maybe it's me, right? Maybe
Hmm.
I'm doing something to deserve this kind of treatment, right? So my question would be for the two of you is that when you're going through the process of building up the self-love that you obviously have now and the confidence you have now, are you surprised at the end result? Or did you always believe that you could get here? It was just going to take some time.
I'm surprised by the end result. I never thought that I would be who I am right now or today. And I would be painfully obvious. I mean, I will be painfully obvious. I mean, transparent in saying that I was weak. And I was very weak as a young man and teenager, young adult. And I always had my grandmother to lean on. With respect to my emotional needs and things of that nature. And I was very much a grandma's boy. Anytime I had a hard time, I would go run to my grandma. And my grandmother would always pick me up and give me a shoulder to lean on. She was my grandmother. She was my mother figure. She was my best friend. She was my spiritual advisor. She was my confidant. I mean, my grandma was the thing that my entire universe centered around. And as I said, I had left home, and I left home in 2005. And even though I left home, I always wanted to come back home, and I always came back home like several times per year so that I could see my grandmother. She was the anchor for me. And my grandma would always tell me, "Baby, I want you to be strong." And those was what she would always tell me anytime that I would be going through something. I would be borrowing her shoulder to cry on it or whatever, or whine on it or whatever, in my areas of weakness or whatever. Well, she passed away in November of 2010. And when she passed away, I was angry with God because I said, you didn't prepare me for this. Who am I going to rely on now? And this, that, and the third. And he gave me my answers. You're going to rely on me. You're going to rely on yourself. And you're going to rely on your daughter. You are strong enough. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, you're stronger than you realize. So in 2010 or whatever, that's when I started making those changes or whatever. And I started becoming who and what my grandmother always raised me to be. So what God had to do is he had to basically say, I'm going to take away your crutch. And now that I've taken away your crutch, you have to walk without it. I'm going to pull these training wheels away from you. You now have to ride without it. And you have to ride without it because you're not a son and a grandson anymore. You're a father now. And if you continue down this path of weakness, your child is going to suffer. You have to find the strength that your grandmother instilled upon you because your mission is you are going to raise this little girl. And I got custody of Haelee in June of 2010, about 2 or 3 weeks before Father's Day. My grandmother passed away 5 months after that. So I said, how do I go on this parenting journey alone? How do I go through this journey through life alone? And he told me, you've got everything you need. You just have to trust me. You have to trust the process. So I went along for the ride. I've said, I don't have anyone to lean on anymore. I am going to have to take this walk and I'm going to have to take this ride by myself. And in taking a walk and taking a ride by myself, I realized that what he said to me in my dream when I prayed and asked him these questions was true. I found my strength, and I found my strength of character, conviction, and everything once my grandmother was taken away from me. So, I say all the time, and I said today, as a matter of fact, I wish that my granny was here so that she could see me now, so that she could see what her grandboy became, and so that she could see that I finally realized and found my strength. Of course, she's looking down and she could see it, but I wish she could see it in person as opposed to spirit. So I'm absolutely surprised and looking at myself today versus yesterday. It's like night and day. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature, old things have passed away. So the former me, who lacked the self-esteem, who always needed his grandma, was always hiding under his grandmother's skirt, that boy has long been dead. This is a new creature and a new vessel that stands before you today.
I love it. I love it. Haelee, anything you want to add as well?
I feel like I always knew that I would get somewhere, but I just didn't know exactly when. I'm that person who I like to just take confidence in every single thing that I do. I'm humble, but I also like to brag. And when it comes to bragging, it's more about things that I've done personally. For example, every time I reach my lowest point, I always bring myself back up. Every time I feel myself going back to my lowest point, I always bring myself back up. I don't ever let myself fall through that hole, and which I have done plenty of times before. So when I was going through all this stuff, I was like, nope, the world is over. I'm over. I just want to live day and just eventually pass away. That's what my mindset was like. And I knew deep down that I was going to get somewhere, but I was like, nope. So then without me consciously knowing, I did end up bringing myself up, and I have explained what I've done to do that. And that's a strength that I think that is something that you have to learn rather than something that is exactly taught to you. So people can tell you, this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do. But in reality, nobody really knows but you.